What's going on, guys? My name is G-String and we're going to be doing a different kind of video today. Usually I upload my own Pokemon challenge videos, but I thought we could look at the problems with the newer Pokemon games. I know that a lot of you have noticed that these Pokemon challenge videos have gotten very popular over the past year or so, but only with the older versions of Pokemon. Is the franchise dying? Is Pokemon losing popularity? Well, strictly looking at the numbers, Pokemon has maintained consistent sales over the last 15 years, even having an increase in sales with the new Pokemon Sword and Shield games coming out in 2019. So is the franchise really dying? Probably not. But is Game Freak becoming more and more out of touch with its audience? Probably. Looking at this graph, 26% of people that were intending on buying Pokemon Sword and Shield were between the ages of 21 and 35, and even more with the older ranges and less with the younger ages. So Pokemon is starting to become played mostly by older people, and Game Freak doesn't really understand this. So we're going to be basically looking at what the heck Pokemon is doing wrong, and just makes you scratch your head. Well, not Pokemon, actually it's Game Freak, but either way, we're going to be looking at what the problems are with Pokemon and how we could possibly fix the game to make them more playable now. First, we're going to look at difficulty. Older games just provide a greater challenge than the new iterations of the game. I think of Misty's Starmie and Whitney's Miltank as major turning points in a lot of these older games, at least for gym leaders' sake. Newer games make leveling up so easy with the Team EXP share. You don't even have to train your Pokemon anymore. You just battle along the way, and all of a sudden your Pokemon are level 70 or 80. I remember playing Sword and Shield and never having to grind at all, never having any issues with any of the gym leaders. And the funny thing is that gyms have fewer Pokemon than previous generations. I'm pretty sure in Sword and Shield, the 8th gym leader only has 4 Pokemon at their disposal, versus Red, Blue, Crystal, and Gold, all those iterations had full Pokemon teams by the time you reach them. It appeals more to the kids because the game becomes a lot easier and you basically get babied through the entire game, and the older players just don't like this, myself included. I don't really enjoy playing the newer games. I find them to be incredibly boring because of this, and they're not very interesting. It's also led to this phenomenon of playing these challenges and doing Nuzlockes and all sorts of different things and modding the games to make them more challenging for players so that they get something out of it and it doesn't seem so stale. But overall, it makes these new games very uninteresting and incredibly stale, and it doesn't seem like anything else is going to change. However, this isn't the first issue with the game, and there's plenty more coming about. The next big issue is repetitiveness. Overall, the main story of Pokemon hasn't changed. You get a starter Pokemon, you battle a rival or a similar counterpart, you battle an evil organization, you beat all the gyms, and you defeat the Elite Four. But throughout the entire existence of the game from the 90s to now, that hasn't really changed. The formula has remained the same. Another thing that's incredibly discerning to a lot of players now is, even when the game has moved over from the DS console to the Nintendo Switch, is NPCs still have text dialogue. They don't have voiceovers or anything to make the NPCs seem more alive or more interactive with the player. They just seem dead and uninteresting. The game is just too straightforward. It's too predictable. You know what's going to happen every which way. It doesn't seem like anything is going to happen differently, and it just seems like every other iteration previously. It seems almost like you're playing an EA franchise game like Madden or FIFA, where nothing changes year over year other than better graphics and more sweat on the players' heads, it seems like. The only slight change that Pokemon has ever seen in its basically entire existence is in Pokemon Sun and Moon with the island challenges and no gym leaders, but this really wasn't a good change to the game. It made it incredibly easy and incredibly boring with these side mini-games that took up way too much time for the player and were very uninteresting overall. Some things that I thought of while making this video was trying to add something that reflects maybe the anime, such as Pokemon getting stolen and maybe having to battle a gym without your starter Pokemon, or having to catch other Pokemon that you wouldn't normally catch in the game. Because honestly, a lot of the players just use their starter and don't need to catch very many Pokemon based on its ease of play nowadays. Or maybe even adding these more mature plot lines. I don't know if that would ever go over. I don't think Pokemon would ever compromise its younger audience. and the merchandise sales that it would get if it were to move to a more mature game, but definitely something that Game Freak, Pokemon, Niantic, or Nintendo could always think about and try to implement into their game to make it a little bit more interesting and work more for the older audience. Now, this is an issue that a lot of people may or may not disagree with, but I would say replayability is another huge issue with the game. For the most part, after a lot of these games are done, there's nothing really to do. Other than trying to complete the Pokédex and catch legendaries, some of them that move around and take hours upon hours to catch, there's no side quests, there's no other gyms to battle or trainers to battle or any other real challenge to continue on through the game. Also, at this point, most of your Pokemon are at a really high level, so catching a lower level legendary, or in some cases when you do complete the Pokédex, getting another starter don't do much for the player because their Pokemon are already at such high levels and train very well. They don't feel the need to want to train another Pokemon all the way up to these levels. Something that I think would be really interesting with the game is the addition of possible side quests at the end of the game that provide maybe even a greater reward for completing the Pokédex, such as going to a new area, providing new challenges for the player, and making it so that the player can experience more of the game without feeling like they have to play online. Another thing that goes unsaid a lot of the time in these games is allowing you to catch all the Pokemon in a region. There are some games where version exclusivity exists and you can't catch the Pokemon unless you have both games, or just in general, all the Pokemon in the Pokédex can't be caught, which seems kind of pointless when the main say of Pokemon is gotta catch them all. Well, it's kind of hard to catch them all when the game doesn't allow you to catch them all. So I think having the ability to catch all the Pokemon in a region, having an incentive to catch these Pokemon, and possibly including more legendaries, more side quests, more interactive ways to make the game play longer, but without making the game more frustrating. I think the gold standard for this implementation is Heart Gold and Soul Silver. So after you complete Heart Gold, Soul Silver, you get an entirely new region. You have the Kanto region and the Johto region to get through. And you get to use your own Pokemon, but the gyms in the newer region are a lot higher level and gives you an incentive to still train. And additionally, there's a side quest with Arceus where you can catch, I believe, a Giratina, a Palkia, or a Dialga by working with Cynthia in the end. And I thought that was a really interesting side quest that they could implement into the game. Granted, you have to have an Arceus in order to complete this side quest, but still, I thought it was a very interesting take, and I wish more of the Pokemon games would have this sort of inclusion into their games after they're done. Now, Pokemon Online is something that people have discussed as replayability, and I don't think that Pokemon's online piece is really as compelling as other games such as a Call of Duty or a sports franchise game, just because it's a turn-based game and it takes a lot of time and takes a lot of skill, and not very many people are interested in the competitive side of Pokemon. I myself am a little bit interested and I play a little bit of competitive, but overall it's not very popular and a lot of people don't want to have to spend the time to EV train and do all the other sorts of things that it takes to have a competitive team. So unfortunately, for a lot of people, that really isn't a replayability aspect that they appreciate, and really makes people close the game right after they complete the main story. So for those that enjoy the single player aspect, I think adding these additions would be really helpful to the Pokemon franchise and the overall enjoyability of the game, and make it a lot more interesting to play for many hours upon hours. So overall, while Pokemon isn't really a dying franchise and is in no way going to be declining anytime soon, I believe, there are plenty of changes that could be added to the game that would make it a lot more interesting and would probably make the game a lot more fun, and would probably lead to less of these Pokemon challenge videos. It would probably allow players to experience something new, and I know a lot of people don't like change in these games and a lot of people like to keep things the same, but honestly, I think Pokemon is very overdue for a little bit of change. It's one thing just to add improved graphics. It's another thing to actually change the gameplay, the interactions with NPCs in the game, to change the layout of the game, to change the overall story of the game, and not keep something that's so cookie cutter and bland. Another thing that I noticed is when Pokemon came out with the new addition to the game, the Isle of Armor for sword and the other one for shield. It seemed a lot like a cash grab from Nintendo, and honestly, that's not really the content that people are looking for. So I think if Pokemon wants to improve their game, they're going to have to make some changes in the near future. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you want more content like this, make sure to leave a like or a comment, subscribe, and add me on my Twitter, GStringPlays with a Z. Other than that, thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys later.